Late at night, a distress signal was detected at sea. The transmission was weak, broken and distorted, filled with static, but one sentence came through clearly. All crew dead. Then silence. Few moments later, the radio operator spoke again. One final sentence. I die. And after that, the transmission completely stopped. The signal was traced to a cargo ship crossing the waters of Southeast Asia, the SS Ourang Medan. Rescue ships immediately began searching for the vessel, but when they finally arrived, they discovered something deeply unsettling. Bodies were scattered across the ship, on the deck, inside the hallways, even inside the radio room. Every person on board was dead. But strangely, none of the bodies showed any visible injuries. And on nearly every face, the same expression remained. Pure terror, as if in their final moments they had seen something no human being was ever meant to witness. The story first emerged sometime around 1947. Several ships traveling near the Strait of Malacca reportedly intercepted a strange emergency transmission. The signal was unstable. Heavy static cut through the message. Words appeared, then vanished, then returned again. But the words themselves were unmistakable. All officers dead. The message was believed to have come from the radio operator aboard the SS Ourang Medan. Then another sentence followed, shorter, far more unsettling. Captain dead. All officers dead in chart room and bridge. Then silence. For several seconds, nothing but static. And finally, one last message. I die. After that, the transmission completely disappeared. But something about the distress call made no sense. It was not a pirate attack. There was no storm, no collision warning, no sinking alert. The ship itself was still afloat. The radio equipment was still functioning. And yet, the messages suggested that everyone on board was already dying. So nearby rescue vessels immediately began searching for the ship. When rescuers finally reached the location, the SS Ourang Medan was still drifting at sea. It did not look like a ship on the verge of sinking. If anything, it looked unnaturally calm. No movement could be seen on deck, no smoke, no visible signs of fire. The rescue crew carefully boarded the vessel, and almost immediately they discovered something disturbing. Bodies on the deck, inside the corridors, near the engine room. They were everywhere. Crew members appeared to have collapsed exactly where they stood. But the most unsettling detail was their faces, eyes wide open, mouths frozen in terror, expressions that seemed to capture the final seconds of unimaginable fear. Some bodies were reportedly found with their arms raised upward, as though they had been instinctively reacting to something above them. Even the ship's dog was said to have died in the same condition. Several rescuers later claimed many of the bodies appeared to be facing the same direction, as though everyone on board had been staring at the exact same thing. But there were no wounds, no blood, no signs of violence, nothing that explained what had happened. It was as though life aboard the vessel had simply stopped all at once. The rescue crew began investigating the interior of the ship, and almost immediately they noticed something strange. The SS Ourang Medan was drifting through tropical waters. Outside the air was hot, humid, oppressive, but inside the vessel the temperature felt completely different, especially near the engine room. Several reports claimed certain sections of the ship felt unnaturally cold. Some rescuers later said every breath inside the vessel felt like inhaling air inside a refrigerated warehouse. The contrast made no sense. A ship floating beneath the tropical sun should not have felt that way. At first, the rescue crew suspected poisonous gas. It seemed like the most logical answer. But that explanation created new questions. If toxic gas had spread through the ship, why had so few people attempted to escape? Why were so many bodies found with nearly identical expressions of terror? And why did the atmosphere inside the vessel feel so disturbingly wrong? Some members of the rescue crew later described the same feeling. Not fear, not panic, something harder to explain. That ship felt wrong, as if someone was still inside. Of course, many years later, some details may have been exaggerated. Stories grow, memories change, legends expand. But one problem remained. Soon after the discovery, something even stranger happened. The rescue crew prepared to tow the SS Ourang Medan back toward port. But during the operation, smoke suddenly began rising from below deck. At first, it seemed minor, nothing more than a small problem. But within minutes, the smoke grew thicker, darker, more aggressive. The rescue crew immediately ordered an evacuation, and only moments later, a massive explosion erupted inside the ship. The blast shook the entire vessel. Metal groaned, debris scattered, and the deck lurched beneath their feet. Then the ship began tilting violently. Within a short time, the SS Ourang Medan started slipping beneath the sea, and with it, the mystery only deepened. Because as the vessel sank, almost every piece of physical evidence vanished forever. The bodies, the cargo, the ship logs, the engine records, gone, swallowed by the ocean. All that remained were witness accounts, fragments of testimony, rumors, and one final transmission. A short distress signal ending with the words, "I die." As the years passed, people began proposing different explanations. The most widely accepted theory involved toxic chemicals. At the time, some cargo ships were rumored to transport dangerous substances. Researchers later suggested that seawater may have entered the cargo hold, triggering a chemical reaction that released deadly gas throughout the vessel. If that happened, the crew may have been overcome before they even realized what was happening, and the explosion that destroyed the ship could potentially be explained by the same chemicals. For many people, it sounded reasonable, perhaps even convincing. But there was a problem. The theory answered some questions, not all of them. Why did the rescue crew survive after boarding the vessel? Why did so many victims appear frozen in expressions of extreme terror? And why were the records surrounding the incident so incomplete, so difficult to verify? Even today, the most accepted explanation still leaves behind unanswered questions. As time passed, an even stranger question emerged. Did the SS Ourang Medan actually exist at all? Some researchers began searching for official maritime records, but the deeper they looked, the stranger the story became. Documentation linked to the vessel was inconsistent, fragmented, difficult to verify. Its nationality remained uncertain. Reliable shipping records were surprisingly difficult to locate, and eventually some investigators proposed a new possibility. What if the ship had never existed? What if the entire story was nothing more than a maritime legend? At first, that explanation seemed possible. But it created another problem. Too many traces of the story remained. Newspaper reports, radio references, maritime archives, independent accounts describing the same distress signal. Too much information existed for the story to feel completely fictional. And perhaps that became the most unsettling part. Not whether the story was true, but whether the truth had become impossible to separate from the legend. Even now, no one has ever been able to prove either version completely. Even today, the SS Ourang Medan case has never been fully explained. Some believe toxic gas killed everyone on board. Others point to dangerous cargo, and some question whether the ship ever existed at all. Every explanation answers part of the mystery, but none of them answer everything. And that is why, after decades, the SS Ourang Medan remains unsolved. Even today, people still listen to that final transmission. A broken distress signal, fragments of static, and one final sentence: I die. What truly happened inside that ship? What the crew saw in their final moments? Why every face appeared frozen in terror? Nobody knows. Maybe the answer sank beneath the ocean, alongside the SS Ourang Medan itself. But even now, when people stare out across dark open water, some still wonder about that ship. What exactly happened on board that night? And why, after all these years, nobody has ever fully explained it.
This story ends here. But in the darkness, stories remain. Will you stay for the next one? Dark Case Hub.